Ewadreris en welkom op mijn kanaal. Mijn naam is Talbeminar en ik kom uit Amerika. Vandaag gaan we over het Nederlands praten, otherwise formerly known as Belgian, Windmillenese, Tall People Canal Language, Drunk English, or Femboy German. This is the 13th episode of Language Review, a series where I go through the languages of the world and review them, sort of like a film critic or a video game reviewer, but for languages, specifically from the perspective of a language learner. I'll discuss who speaks them, their grammar, their difficulty, and tons of other stuff before finally giving them an official Language Simp certified rating on the Simp scale. If you enjoy this video, let me know which language you would like me to review next in the comments, and without further ado, Hatsikide Yalla. Dutch? I love the Netherlands. They have walkable cities with no cars, so many windmills, and bicycles everywhere. Shut up, you're American. Be patriotic. We have walkable cities, clean energy, and bike lanes right here. Okay, you're right, but the Netherlands is gonna be underwater soon, so I don't see why we'd waste our time talking about it. But I guess I have no choice. Dutch is mainly spoken by about 17 million NPCs in a tiny country that people for some reason are dying to move to, known as Holland or the Netherlands. Same thing. The names are 100% interchangeable, don't look it up, don't believe them when they correct you, just call it Holland, or better yet, just call it Amsterdam, they'll love you for that. And yes, this country is rapidly sinking into the Atlantic Ocean like the Titanic, and a third of the country is already below sea level, so if you want to go soon. I predict they've got like 2 weeks left above water. There they have tulips, canals, extremely questionable traditions, and great coffee, all in one tiny European utopia. And if you're lucky, maybe you'll run into the great Wouter Kortevener on the street and he'll shock you with some flawless Gujarati. But Dutch isn't only spoken in Amsterdam. You see, back in the day when the Dutch were comfortably above sea level, they went out on boats and brutally colonized many different parts of the world while also generously gifting their language to their victims. So in 2025, Dutch is spoken in the South American country of Suriname, which just feels wrong. When you're in these Mexican countries, you're supposed to speak Spanish. And there are also a bunch of Dutch islands in the Caribbean, which feels even wronger. When you think of the Netherlands, you don't think of tropical island vacations. You think of cold European winters, World War II, and Anne Frank, whose diary, originally written in Dutch, really moves me. Next in Southeast Asia, Femboy German is spoken a teeny weeny bit in Indonesia, although these Chads mostly got rid of it. Indonesia actually banned Dutch in 1957, which is the most based thing I've ever heard in my 26 years of life. You see, we here in America apologize for what happened to the Native Americans, but in the Netherlands, they kind of make fun of their colonization. If you mention the Netherlands online, you'll be spammed with the word gekoloniseerd, which means colonized. Seriously, every article, post, and video online that even hints at the hypothetical existence of the Netherlands will be littered with gekoloniseerd comments. But thankfully it hasn't happened to me yet, and I hope it never does. And now the best for last. Dutch is, thank God, spoken by about 5.5 million NPCs in the good part of Belgium, known as Flanders, which is basically the entire top half of the country. There they have amazing food like this, which they literally call mouse shit. Their chocolate is only slightly worse than Mr. Beast's. They're decent at making American French fries, and unlike the other major European powers, Belgium didn't colonize anyone. So in total, there are about 30 million. Wait a second. What? They were literally the worst? So in total, there are about 30 million Dutchophones in the world, which means learning Femboy German will unlock you practically zero DLC. But before I continue, I have a very special announcement for those of you who want to learn languages and become a polyglot. For a limited time only, you can now get a discount on my comprehensive language learning ebook guide, the Hyperpolyglot Handbook. Just go to languagesimp.com and use code DUTCH at checkout to get $5 off. Are you tired of being a monolingual soy boy beta? Do you want to become a hyperpolyglot gigachad? If so, you need to read the Hyperpolyglot Handbook. This comprehensive ebook will teach you exactly how I learn a language from start to finish in the most fun, effective, yet realistic way imaginable. Learning lingos is simple and fun, and if you feel lost or want a new perspective, this book is perfect for you. Go to languagesimp.com and use code DUTCH at checkout for $5 off. That's languagesimp.com, or click the link in the description and use code DUTCH for $5 off the Hyperpolyglot Handbook, a gigachad's guide to to language learning today. Now it's time to talk about the dialects of the Dutch language. There are hundreds of them, so I'll only give a broad overview. There's Dutch Dutch, spoken in the Netherlands, and then there's Flemish Dutch, spoken in Flanders, Belgium. Dutch Dutch is kinda meh, and it sounds really harsh, like a toad choking on a herring. Dutch people don't really care too much about their language, so they often disregard grammar rules. The youth doesn't even want to speak it, and it has a ton of international loanwords and influence. While Flemish Dutch is awesome, and it sounds very soft and melodic like a beautiful singing bird. And Flemings are proud of their language, so they follow the rules and they allow in less international influence, except from French, because as hard as they've tried, Flanders still is not independent from the Belgian baguette people. One day, Flanders, America stands with you. Then if we zoom in, we'll see smaller dialect groups forming that sort of bleed over the border. And some are just completely different languages, which are sadly dying, because the Netherlands is so colonial that they couldn't resist the urge to colonize even themselves. So these minority languages have historically been suppressed. There's Limburgish, which basically has tones like Wu Chinese, and Low Saxon is rough and tough and much more similar to Low German. Then Frisian is the closest living language to Old American. Those are all definitely not Dutch. But you know what is Dutch? The Hollandic dialect found in North and South Holland, which includes Amsterdam. This dialect is what dominates the media and is the basis for the standard language in the Netherlands, and it's the one that learners most often study, but you shouldn't. Hollandic is what you're thinking of when you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat because you remembered that Dutch exists. Then there's Zeelandic, which sort of sounds nasally. It's slower than most varieties of the language, and it reminds me of how people down in Alabama speak. Next there's Street Dutch, which is spoken by the cool kids in the city, and it incorporates some Moroccan Darija, Turkish, Berber, and a ton of American words. I love those four languages, so this is what I would learn. Then there's Brabantian, which is so warm and gorgeous. It's softer sounding, and it's the basis for standard Flemish spoken in Belgium. There's also something called Tussentaal, which is the informal language full of slang that Belgians use to communicate with one another on a daily basis. And this is what I recommend you learn if you're a Chad who wants to pull chicks. Then there's West Flemish, which is guttural and real thick. They conjugate yes and no for some reason, and they have the Arabic sound. And finally, East Flemish is similar to West, but a little more neutered. Oh, now please, for the love of God, get me out of Europe and take me to a better, safer continent. Down in the very secure country of South Africa, they speak a language I'm sure y'all have all heard of. Afrikaans. Every single scholar with a brain says that Afrikaans is a separate language from Dutch, but I'm not a scholar with a brain. I think they're too similar, and I believe that Afrikaans is a better, simpler, and more efficient dialect of Dutch. Or maybe Dutch is a dialect of Afrikaans. We'll go with that. And then finally, in the greatest American state, a dialect called Pennsylvania Dutch is spoken by about 300,000 NPCs. But this is actually a dialect of German. They just call it Dutch to troll monolingual betas. Also in Tariff Land, one of our presidents spoke Dutch. No, not her. God, she should have had it. No, I mean Martin van Buren, and Dutch was his native language. What a traitor. Now it's time to talk about the writing system. The Dutch language is written in an exact plagiarized copy of the American alphabet, which honestly offends me quite a bit. What are you doing? Just trying to make the C rise faster. They've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, I, J, Y, and Z. Wait a second, what was that one? Yeah, that one. Isn't that 2 letters? Canker. You can't smush them together and act like they're one. I hate this so much. Dutch people will swear that it's not a letter, but they sure act like it's one. It makes a specific sound as a unit, like A, and if they're at the start of a sentence, they'll capitalize both of them. So that reeks of a letter to me. But at least the lore behind why it exists is heartwarming. You see, one day, the I was biking along the canals in Amsterdam when he flipped his black gazelle Omafeets over a stroopwafel and fell right into Jay, who was also a man. They went to get some friet met mayo under a windmill, split the bill 50-50 Dutch style, fell in love, and sewed themselves together. Then they died. True story, I was the windmill. But apart from that monstrosity, the alphabet has some other quirks. For example, Holland copied a bit of Poland's homework as the J makes a Y sound like yeah, Polska górum. Then the V makes an F sound and the W makes a V sound just like they do in German, plagiarism. And rather embarrassingly, the U makes the same difficult sh sound that the French have. But the R totally redeems the entire alphabet. It's supposed to be a little rolly like r, or guttural like r, but some Dutchies let freedom ring and pronounce it just like an American would. Raise those tariffs. It's interesting. You'll hear the American R a lot from young Dutch people who are slowly drifting away from their language in favor of American, which honestly is kind of tragic, but at the same time,
fuck yeah, America.
However, the most baffling letter I may have ever seen in any language in the Milky Way galaxy is the Dutch G. Is it a G? Is it a J? No, it's a H. It's an extremely harsh noise that reminds me of someone puking or a giant dying hippopotamus taking its last breath, and it genuinely hurts my throat. And I'm not the only person to report discomfort or even pharyngitis after practicing it. I'm scared to ask this, but you know how American babies say goo goo gaga? Do Dutch babies say goo goo gaga? Or are they too busy colonizing Indonesia to say anything? Thankfully, Belgians do not tend to make this harsh G sound. It's a lot closer to an H in their dialect, so I guess Belgian babies would be like, Dutch also has some accent markers, but they're not really important. My favorite though is the diaresis that looks like two balls floating on top of a letter. Basically, you put the diarrhea there and it separates the vowels into two syllables. Vowels are kinda jarring in Dutch, like just look at this goofy looking word with a ton of double vowels. When they're doubled, they make a long vowel sound, and it's actually satisfying to look at. But what isn't satisfying are the many diphthongies found in this language. If you're American or uneducated, what's the difference? A diphthong is basically when you make a vowel sound and midway through it you transition your gender and switch to another vowel sound, like in the word moist. Moist. Oi. There are a lot of these in Dutch, and there are even triphthongs, but most are unremarkable. However, this diphthong is 99% responsible for the stereotypical, iconic hargelbargel met eige horkenscheigel sound that the Dutch language has. It makes the ow sound, which I can kinda do, but I sound like I'm whining like a loser, and I think I make it too nasally. Oh. But how does Dutch sound in general? What's the vibe like, Mocker? Well, a lot of people online claim that it's one of the ugliest languages in the observable universe, and it'll put you in the hospital and require you to get multiple throat replacements, but it's not ugly. It's goofy but melodic at the same time, and I enjoy listening to people speak it. Especially this little guy. He's like the Naruto of the Netherlands. Also, Dutch music is surprisingly really fire. My favorite artist to listen to is Snolabolicus, who is basically the Tupac of the Netherlands. Then I also like the Europapa guy, who is basically just an Eminem tribute act. But unfortunately, mainstream Dutch culture is just a bunch of gabbers listening to boom 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 for 4 days straight without sleeping. But in stark contrast to everything we've witnessed thus far, Dutch vocab is extremely normal. Just kidding, it's like the most goofiest thing you'll ever see in your life. Many people online claim that Dutch is not a serious language, but I'd go further and argue that it's not a real language. Just look at this tweet, or excretion, or whatever you call it these days. I don't even know what to say. The chest speaks for itself. I promise, this screenshot is real. And let's take a look at who wrote this tweet. Geert Wilders. At a certain point in history, Geert was expected to become Prime Minister of the Netherlands, but instead my dude Dick Schoof stepped up to the plate. What are these names? I think Geert and Dick should kiss. But I don't know how you do it, Dick. I personally would never want to be Prime Minister of the Netherlands, since the Dutch people once killed and ate their own Prime Minister back in the day. There are so many other examples of this language trolling Americans, like Die Man is Dude, or my personal favorite,
Mijn vader is dokter.
I guess they're allowed to plagiarize our language since New York originally was Neo Amsterdam after all. The Dutchies love silly maxing. Want to know how to say baseball in Dutch? I know you don't, but I'm gonna tell you, it's honkball. Who wants to play a game of honkball? Are any geese watching this video? Let's pick teams in the comments. Also, the word for dog breeder really grosses me out, like to the point where I won't even say it on camera, so just check the comments, I'm sure someone said it by now. Even trying to be polite in Dutch sounds goofy. To formally ask someone to do something, you say, Kunt u dat doen? However, just because things are silly doesn't mean that they're hard. Dutch is one of the easiest languages to learn on the planet. And if you start Dutch today, you'll want to first learn a greeting. One of the most common ones is
Kindercarnavalsoptochtvoorbereidingswerkzaamheden.
oh no, that's wrong. That is a real compound word, but I actually meant goedemorgen. Then how are you is hoe gaat het? And if you speak German, boy will this be even easier for you. Almost 70% of femboy German words have a very similar equivalent in real German. And if you look at the same word in both languages, 11 times out of 10, the word is much easier in Dutch. And pure native Dutch words aren't complicated either. Dutch people love feet. Which is the native word for bicycle. If they could marry their feets, they would. Although one thing that is very confusing are these words, which you'll hear all the time. Nederland is the name of the country. Nederlands is the name of the language found in Nederland. Nederlandse is a woman from Nederland who probably speaks Nederlands. And Nederlander is a man from Nederland who probably speaks Nederlands and could perhaps be married to a Nederlandse or another Nederlander or multiple Nederlanders. Polygamy is illegal in the Netherlands, but I deadass think I found a loophole, so if you're interested, email me. It's on my channel somewhere, the email if you want to email me about polygamy. Another interesting thing about Dutch is their very bizarre roster of curse words. You can call someone an acorn, akel, or an idiot, idiot, but those aren't too offensive. The real powerful swear words in Dutch are about diseases. Typhus is a disease that killed millions of people. No laughing matter, but the Dutch use it as a curse word, like in the phrase, krijg de tyfus. They use a lot of different diseases for this exact purpose, but if you want to be a wanker, you'll use the word kanker. Kanker means cancer, and it's the most offensive word in the Dutch language. Now, don't be a twerp and go to Antwerp and start calling people kankers. That would be extremely rude. Instead, say kankerlier, which means cancer sufferer and is much more of a pointed insult. Don't get mad at me for saying it. That's what they say. You act like I invented it. I didn't want to say it. I don't like it. I'm just an educator. But Dutch grammar isn't too offensive. It's literally just German grammar minus all the overcomplicated hocus pocus dog water. According to Dutch people, there are only two genders, and they're not what you think they are. They're neuter and man-woman. Yes, Dutch progressivism is not only found in coffee shops. So masculine and feminine nouns both take the definite article, de, while neuter nouns like book, work, and girl take the neuter article, het. And I'm so happy to report that the Dutch language does not have a cringe and unnecessary case system like German. Wow, that must be nice. So the pronouns are pretty easy. There's ich, which mogs the heck out of the German ich. Then there's Julie, which is literally just a girl's name. And I love the reflexive pronouns. Myself is mezelf, yourself is jezelf, and you plural self is juliezelf. Men, don't forget to check juliezelf for kanker. Wait, don't do it now, wait till after the video. And verbs in Windmillenese aren't too bad either. There are a decent amount of conjugations, but none of them really stick out to me as anything crazy. There are two major types of verbs, beta soyboy kissless weak verbs, and Chad alpha male stud strong verbs. My favorite soyboy verb is wachelen, which means to waddle. When we conjugate wachelen in the present tense, we've only got these three forms. That's pretty easy. For weak verbs, the stem does not change in the past tense. And for strong verbs, it does change. In the present tense, you'd say ich stink. But the past tense would be ich stonk. Wow, so hard. There are other types of verbs, but one thing is common among all of them. They're just not that hard. This is an easy language. The only thing that can be a little hard are the separable verbs. Like if you want to say, I am not touching the raccoon, you'd say, ich raak die wasbar niet aan. Even though the infinitive of the verb is aanraken, one word. But please don't act like that's hard. We have that in American. I pick the raccoon shit up, I put it down. It's common sense. They also have irregulars, but like which language doesn't have irregulars? Is there even one? And don't say Esperanto. Please don't say Esperanto. I'll delete my channel. The most common is sein, meaning to be, and as you can see, it doesn't really make any sense, like ben, bent, is, and sein itself? But the past tense is dope because it's basically just was, which seems familiar. Oh yeah, and the language is technically subject, verb, object, so a lot of the time you have to put the verb at the end of the sentence like German, but that genuinely takes like 5 business days to figure out max. So in general, Dutch grammar has its quirks, but it's nothing to get worked up about. Now it's time to talk about shock factor. How will native Dutch speakers react to you speaking their language as a foreigner? Well, if you walk up to a Dutch person in the Netherlands, first of all, you're going to get absolutely hype-mogged. Even though their country is low, these people are very high. But yeah, if you somehow manage to get eye level with them and you speak Dutch to a Dutch person, they're going to immediately switch to American and embarrass you. It will feel like you're about to make the easiest open layup of your life, but LeBron James, or let's call him Leon Brown Jansen, comes out of nowhere and blocks your shot back into your face at the last second. Dutchies will not, under any circumstances, speak Dutch with you. They speak American better than Americans, either with a terrible accent or with one that is indistinguishable from that of a native. There's no in between. In fact, I've met Dutch people who speak American better than they speak their own lingo. It feels like Dutch people aren't really proud of their language like a lot of other people groups, and a good number of them just prefer American. Belgians, however, will sue your ass if you don't speak Dutch. They're hardcore since they were linguistically oppressed, and they still have to tolerate the French language today. Maybe they'd enjoy it if you spoke Dutch in Suriname, but let's be honest, if you're going to South America, you're going to Venezuela, not Suriname. And keep in mind that learning Dutch to a good level just isn't as impressive as learning a lot of other languages to a good level. It's an easy language. What did you expect? You will never be able to shock a Dutch person, and you will never make them backflip with excitement. This is the worst language for shock factor in the universe. There's so much more I could say about this language, but frankly, I don't want to talk about it anymore, so it's time I give Dutch an official Language Simp certified rating on the Simp scale. On a scale of dog water to Giga Chad, I place Dutch solidly in... Don't forget to use code Dutch at checkout to get $5 off the Hyperpolyglot Handbook, link in description. The beta tier. The Dutch language just honestly isn't that exciting to me. Learning it unlocks barely any DLC, and it kind of feels like it's dying even in the country where it comes from. The Netherlands is either going to be completely underwater like Atlantis in 3 weeks, or it's going to be an Americaphone country. And German is right there next door just begging to be learned. Plus, learning German won't physically injure you, but if you learn Dutch, you'll need throat replacements and probably therapy. As a Native American speaker, it's a little hard to take serious sometimes, but I guess someone from China who doesn't speak English wouldn't think this is funny, so I acknowledge that I'm biased. I will admit that Dutch sounds very cute and endearing, and most women in the universe think it's a sexy language. But it's also one of the easiest in the galaxy for Native Americans, so I guess if you want to dabble, I'm not gonna judge you. But with all that being said, I will learn Dutch one day. Just kidding, I would rather someone give me a Dutch oven. If you know what that is, you might have laughed. If you don't, look up Dutch oven slang. And that's the video. Don't forget to go to languagesimp.com and enter code Dutch at checkout to get $5 off of the Hyperpolyglot Handbook for a limited time only. And if you enjoyed this video, consider supporting me on Patreon, where I make language learning advice videos. Let me know in the comments which language you'd like me to review next, and let's see, how do you say goodbye in Dutch? Tot ziens!